Newman, like it's not clear to me whether this is all along Stan Edgar Con, if Newman literally did betray him and she's acting on her own, if she was a fear, like what the extent fear motivated or what the extent like Jim's going on, this is a new world order and she wants her daughter to be a part of it. Who the fuck knows? Because they just dropped like a hot potato. And we've not seen her in that fearful spot since.
Nope, haven't seen her daughter. Don't know what she's up to.
It's a real mystery. Hopefully we'll find out next season. Will's up next. It says, in the last few episodes, we've learned that Homelander possesses super senses. I think these sensory powers present an interesting window into both himself and Stan Edgar. For Homelander, with super senses, knowing, including smell and hearing, you'd have to think that he would immediately know when someone is scared based on their heart rate, sweat smells, and any other sensory tells. If you consider the juxtaposition of fans who don't know him and therefore don't fear him, and people who actually know him personally and definitely fear him, I think these sensory powers ratchet up his isolation, loneliness, and self-hatred. I can't but think that it'd be hard to maintain your semblance of mental health if you knew that everyone in your personal life gets scared the second they see you.
Right, this is like the power to read minds is like a blessing and a curse.
Right.
Because, yeah, you don't really want to know what everyone thinks of you all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah, both good and bad. Like if you are someone that constantly draws attention, that would be a nightmare. If you're a person that constantly doesn't, that would also be its own little thing. About Stan Edgar, Homelander's sensory prowess also seems to indicate that Stan truly doesn't fear Homelander. Again, if Homelander can identify racing heart rates and smell changes in body chemistry, you'd think that Homelander would have noticed if Stan was scared. Instead, Stan was unbothered and it threw Homelander completely off. They would all agree that Stan is likely working a few steps ahead of the game, but Homelander's sensory powers provide a little more evidence. That makes a lot of sense, and it also makes a lot of sense why Homelander does seem to be genuinely rattled. Like if most people he talks to, including other supes, are afraid of him, and here's this dude in a suit and wireframe glasses that gives no fucks.
He just bathes in Drakkar Noir every day.
He's got a pacemaker.
Yeah,
he's got a pacemaker.
Yeah,
that's what Homelander doesn't know. But I like the gist of that, Will, and I can't wait to see what is his confidence.
Could his oversensitivity be weaponized against him? That's what I want to know. Like you take one of those super powered sonic blasters they use to disperse crowds and stuff during riots. You turn that on Homelander, see what happens.
Make him piss his tights. We'll see. Sonic weapons. He's got an eardrum weakness introduced into this season. So there you go. Marcus is up next. Says, I want to be clear, I'm a black man, but I'm not from the streets. I've been mostly raised amongst white people and lived amongst them my entire life. I live now in a mostly white neighborhood, and I have a take on the A-Train and his plot. Identity is and always has been a huge issue for me. I don't want to go into details, but when I was younger, I was so used to right-wing ideas and talking points, I had no idea what I was as a black man because I wouldn't address color. A-Train, while being from the quote-unquote streets, has probably spent most of his life as a celebrity, and from a young age was around people not of just different race, but of a different class. So it's probably confusing because when you separate race and class, you're ignoring a huge part of the problem and feeding into the idea that, while completely American in its ideal, is not how the world actually functions. As I got older, my politics tended to drift to the left. There are a lot of reasons for this, but as a hardcore Bush supporter that took a chance on Obama, it gets pretty complicated from there. I think as A-Train matures, he's probably feeling separated from his people, from who he is, but he spent so long making new friends comfortable with him, he might not be embraced by the black community, and he knows it. His meager attempts to reach out fall flat like his new costume or his commercials. He was ambushed by the Blue Hawk meeting. If he was more genuine or sincere, he maybe could have recovered, but he's confused. He wants to earn the love and respect of his people, but he doesn't really understand what's going on. So he goes for the win-win publicity stunt. I find A-Train a tragic character seeking the approval of both communities, and he truly doesn't understand why we can't just get along. He's in a tough spot trying to figure out who he is, but I love the storyline. My opinion's being done really well. It's a different kind of black struggle than we're used to seeing. It has the nuances that I think a story of this cultural magnitude needs to work.
Yeah. The privileged black man struggle. I think that's definitely more nuanced and interesting than, not more nuanced and interesting, but a different flavor of it. Totally.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of OJ. Supposedly was quoted as saying, not being able to understand like his own space and intersectionality in America, saying, when they're saying, well, as a black man, this, he's like, what? I'm not black, I'm OJ. Like, I am, as a brand, bigger. I've and, then you find yourself in a murder trial and you find out, well, are you OJ or are you first, in many people's eyes, a black man?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and it's very similar because they're both highly paid athletes that a lot of America, white especially, tends to identify with and embrace for their performance. Yeah, good points. I'm curious to see where the A Train lands myself.
And I do think he's a sympathetic character, and just seeing his confusion and his attempts to improve himself and get to a healthy place, I think are interesting, and I want to see him succeed at this point. Whereas before, when he was blowing up people's girlfriends by running through them and saying whatever, not a sympathetic character, right? He's come a long way.
Moving on to Nick says, I don't understand Mother's Milk. I think Butcher's actions are completely justified. They're literally fighting an indiscriminate killing machine. Homelander can and will kill anyone and has threatened cities full of people, so I cannot buy this pearl clutching about Compound V and using Soldier Boy, especially with Mother's Milk. If they were fighting an existential threat to humanity, okay, but Butcher and Huey's actions are justified when facing the sort of threat that they are. What do you think about this?
I'm pretty sympathetic to that view. Homelander's a monster, but I'm also somebody who believes in redemption, and that's a tough thing to square when you look at a guy like Homelander.
Well, especially since I don't think Mother's Milk is against killing Homelander. He's against becoming a suit to do it. And
sure.
If you had, you're fighting the Nazis, and someone's like, okay, well, the Nazis, they got them tanks, they got them soldiers, they got them concentration camps. The only way we can defeat the Nazis is more soldiers, more tanks, and more concentration camps. You might be nodding along the first few statements, but then you get to, more concentration camps? What the fuck? So, I think, especially if you have been generationally traumatized by supers, and you probably, Mother's Milk, might think that people are basically good, and maybe Homelander could have been good if he hadn't been shot up full of E. I can see being afraid of what happens to your team and to humanity at large if you take shortcuts and you dance with the devil to, defeat a greater demon, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a logical spiral that happens there, right? Where, okay, if they punch me, I need to punch them harder to stop them from punching me, but then you punch them, so they need to punch you even harder. It's where does that end?
Yeah, and I don't know also why Butcher had such a hard-on to do it right now. It had to be right now, because at the start of this season, they had Homelander contained and kind of on a leash. So why Maeve shows up and is like, well, here's some 1040, you'll probably use it to kill Homelander, and, Butcher's like, bet, I'm taking it right now. If I remember from thought that I don't understand and hasn't been thoroughly tested, and it does seem a little crazy when you think about it in context of where they were in the pace of Homelander development.
Well, it was also tied in with Newman, right? They found out that Newman was a soup and was embedded in,
and they've been working for her. Yeah.
Right, so it runs a lot deeper. And that changed their mind on using it. Because then Butcher was trying to walk the straight and narrow, do it by the book, and then that changed.
And for better or worse, Stan Edgar, Homelander still hasn't been killed, and Stan Edgar is going to take a powerful piece for good off the board because the dude couldn't stop taking 10V in 12 to 18 months. So yeah. Sometimes it's one of those things that saved the village, we had to destroy the village. But did you? Mm-hmm. We'll see. Dan from Manchester says, to run on the back of Jim's theory regarding Soldier Boy taking Soup's powers, I believe that, whether it'll be this season or later, we'll see a scene where Homelander is stripped of all of his power. We'll see him for the weak, pathetic, insecure little boy that he is.
Yes.
I think we'll see him beg for his life, but be killed by multiple Soups as he realizes that everybody did truly hate him. And the only reason they had a pretense, or held a pretense, was due to his immense power. The perfect end for his character would be to die facing his true fears of being unloved and powerless.
And that's the end of the show, right? Because without Homelander, might not have a show.
What? Well, Dan has a thought at the close of his email. Says, I also think it would be really cool if, as Homelander departs the show, we see Huey become obsessed with the power and slowly become a supervillain himself. He has the perfect setup to become the weak, his whole life guy. He gets off on the power trip and slowly becomes everything he hates. I feel as though we're setting this up already. How cool would it be to kill off our main villain Homelander and replace him with our main hero turning villain for a final stretch of the show? Monster Man turning into literal monster, it writes itself. You've sold me. You've sold me, Dan.
And then maybe he can be like the evil Batman with the sidekick of Todd, M's ex's new husband.
The only thing is, I guess, if they kill Homelander next season and they're going to have a 5-season run, you got to have at least a season. Because you got to, unless there's going to end with Huey being the Dark Lord of humanity, you got to then have time to walk all that back and return to balance. So the only reason the slight dislike I have this theory is, like, do I think it's going to be something that the series can bear? Or I guess is The Boys going to be something to do 7-8 seasons? Like, I don't have a good feeling on Amazon of, like, will they AMC something and, like, run The Walking Dead for 12 seasons, just fuck you, that's why? Or are they going to be like, we've gotten our mileage out of here, get rid of